Can you hear me? Am I loud enough? Just want to make sure. The Dharma talk I'm going to give today, the service, is on zeal. As we read at the beginning of the service, zeal is one of the 4 articles to cultivate. You have faith, zeal, questioning, and dedication. This becomes this forms the key for meditation practice, timeless and placeless meditation practice, wisdom cultivation, and from a place of wisdom, making skillful choices. This becomes the key that unlocks the door to the truth of neither arising nor ceasing. Everything's a creation of mind and cause and effect. So zeal is an important component in order to address the fundamental condition of the human existence, that there's this unsatisfactoriness, this dis-ease that we inhabit as a human being in this human body, just as the Buddha pursued. In Buddhist practice is a famous saying, you should practice as if your hair was on fire because the situation is grave and severe. So zeal, the mind that heroically moves forward, the motive force that encourages us, pushes us along when we try to accomplish anything. We need that type of determination in order to solve this issue of suffering and inherent dissatisfaction that we feel in our lives. Zeal is an important component in many religions. In Judaism, for example, how does Israel acquire its name? Well, Jacob, wrestling with the man with an unknown name, wanting for him to bless him, and would not give up, very tenacious, even to the point this unknown man wrenched his hip socket. But even in severe pain, Jacob will not give up. And the unknown man said, your name will be Israel, because you overcame God and man in your to overcome God and man for your pursuit of your blessing. This is the type of determination we need. And just as the Buddha, many years of ascetic practice he practiced. Before then, he meditated for long periods of time, reaching what they call jhana states, higher and higher levels of consciousness. But both of those methods did not solve his problem, that problem that I mentioned. So he goes to the Bodhi tree, sits under the Bodhi tree, and says, flesh may decay, bones may break apart, but I will not leave this spot until I reach enlightenment. This is a question that I ask myself and I also pose to you. Do we have that type of determination when it comes to our practice? That type of zeal that's needed to really solve, to really become a liberated human being from human suffering, as well as to assist the world in its liberation from human suffering. Needless to say, it's interesting that there's a relationship, but maybe not surprising, that zeal and suffering are two ends that assist, one should say that having this life of suffering assists you in developing zeal. Let me put it that way. And quite possibly, this is why it is called a noble truth. Life is suffering. When I first heard it, it's like, this is kind of weird. Life is suffering? This is a noble truth? This is not very uplifting. But actually, it's meant to inspire, because it's from that space that you say, okay, let's solve the problem. Let's get to the solution of this, rather than wallow in this despair, this space, again and again. This is a funny story. There was a man visiting a neighbor visiting another neighbor, and there was a dog on the porch. And the man comes up, greets the other man, good morning, hey, how you doing? And the dog says, And after a while, the visiting neighbor says, what's wrong with your dog? He says, he's laying on a tack. Why doesn't he get up from the tack? It doesn't hurt him enough to get up from the tack. It doesn't hurt him enough to get up. So he sits there moaning. Let us not do that. As one master told one minister who underwent the same type of unskillful choices that they were making the same type of unskillful choices, the master said, you know what, I think you need more suffering. You need to go a little deeper to see how these choices is causing you suffering. It needs to be really palpable in order to really become serious about your practice, to get yourself over that hump. So we have issues in our lives, and they're not to be dealt with frivolously. You know, yes, there are pressures, life pressures. Life has issues. You know, my wife, we have a tension in our relationship. You know, money issues, various kinds of issues, difficulty money issues, and so forth. And these are not to be, you know, taken lightly, but I have to admit, when I read, for example, from Viktor Frankl, who was in the situation in the concentration camp, and it's one of my favorite quotes. He says, everything may be taken away from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And that's the essential point, to choose one's own way. So I remember having a conversation with an individual who was talking about his money situations, life situations, family situations. But as we talked, his own innate wisdom began to see that he had this root desire, status, money. He wanted a big house, he wanted the fancy car, he wanted all of the various recognition of who he is. But he even, and I didn't say anything, he told me that there's something not right about this. Something's off. Even if I get this, I don't think I'll be satisfied. That's his innate wisdom speaking. And yes, and the Buddhist scriptures would say yes. The Buddhist sages would say yes, you are correct. Because they are temporary, they're fleeting. You will compare yourself with someone else. Yeah, I have status, but this guy has higher status, so I'll get that. But what about that guy? He has higher status than me. And that guy would have more money. I'll try to go up there. But what about that guy? It's an endless cycle. You need to get off that cycle. So that is what we need to do. We need to find, it needs to become so palpable, so touching to us, this suffering, this dis-ease, that we will say enough is enough. So, of course, how serious are you in your practice? Are you going to follow societal's values? Or are you going to follow the values, spiritual values, the values of the Buddha Dharma, the values of the sages of the past? And rather than just merely following, it's following, engaging, and see how they develop in your own life. That is where the zeal comes from, I feel, naturally. It reminds me of Albert Einstein. I really love this story. You know, his theory of general relativity. And just to make a long story short, he had an equation that he wrote that was not bad, but he felt there's something wrong with it. I don't know. So he puts it aside, and he tries again. And he goes through all these different types of formula calculations, trying to find the formula that would prove his theory of general relativity for 8 years, trying to find the truth about, you know, this universe is functioning. Can I sum it up in one equation? Can I know the thoughts of God? That was his saying. That was his pursuit. So for 8 years, he wanted to sum up the universal functioning in one equation. And then after 8 years, then after each type of calculation from trying this formula, that formula, not working, then he goes back to the original one he wrote. This actually is not bad. And then that's when he solved the problem. But it's no problem. You have to sometimes go through that type of journey in order to really get to the truth of things. So Master Chungsan, the second head Dharma master, Master Chungsan, talks about there's 3 levels of understanding, three levels of scripture. There's written scripture, everyday scripture, and formless scripture. And Einstein actually, I think, hit all 3. And we need to hit all 3 in our practice. You have the written scripture. The written scripture for Einstein will be the Principia Mathematica, well, Newton's book of physics. That is what he studied. That is what he really dwelled into. It said he would hold the book and walk around with it and really read it. And for us, that is the wisdom of the sages, the Buddha and the other teachings. We read it, we study it, we look at it. But if you stay there, that's not enough. You need to go towards everyday scripture. How does these wisdoms, how does these principles, how can I engage them? How can I see them act in my own life? How will they blossom in my own life? So with Einstein, he did thought experiments using the scientific method to see if this is correct, to see where this needs to be tailored or honed. And then his eureka, the formless scripture, that moment beyond words and speech, the intuitive leap about how reality really is. So you need all those 3 levels. And doing all those 3 levels, zeal naturally blossoms from that. Rather than just trying to make the Dharma fit, no, engaging the Dharma as an investigator. And from that, the zeal comes. In our own tradition, Master Sotasan is another example of a person with zeal. At age 11, inquiring about the nature of his reality, as you could say, the nature of his life. His mother and father, why do they stay together? It was a story where there was a Mount Oyabong in Korea, Oyabong. Clouds will form, and he's thinking as a child, is that solid? It must be solid. I see a thing, so let me see. He will climb up the mountain, struggle up the mountain, and get in the middle of the cloud. There's nothing. What is going on? What's happening here? He would trek from his home all the way up to the mountains, about 6-mile trek. This is during a time where there's starvation in Korea. And he would gather fruits. So he would, pray to the mountain god to answer his problems, give solutions to his problems, solutions to his questions, and will come back down from the mountain. And he did this for 4 years. 4 years, rain, snow, sleet, hail. He will go up the mountain, age 11 to age 15. That's zeal. Zeal and questioning really harmoniously brought together. So for me, I'm trying to enact that in my own life. Zeal, questioning, faith, dedication. So, for example, if you look at your sheet, we'll talk about this briefly. Here's my own practice. And this was an idea given to me by Senior Reverend Kim, who said, your mind cultivation practice is really great. You're meditating in the morning, you're meditating in the evening, but you could tweak your practice just a little by engaging sensory conditions as they come up and seeing how to navigate them as they arise. You can either, you can either write them as they arise or a little later on. But sometime, if that sensory condition, adverse condition is still resonating in your body, inquire about it. So here's a good example. Like 2 p.m., me and her was at the nature store, and I dropped, mistakenly, a pile of cashews all over the floor. And she'll be, oh, Deasun! Begin to pull up the cashews. Now, for other people, that's pretty funny, pretty humorous, But see, by investigating my own mind, that haunts me. I made a mistake. Why did I do that? And I would even consciously, I would say, well, that's something small. That's no problem. But my body, my storehouse consciousness, my karmic body holds on to it. And I found through this journaling, actually, that there's a tendency for my own karma to hold things over time. Even though I would say everything's a creation of my mind, as we say in the essential dharmas of daily practice, disturbances, let them go, delusions, let them go, wrongdoing, let them go. And that's true, but something in me holds on to them. That's why I came up with, but I inquired about it and came up with a morning energy practice, acupuncture, qi gathering practices, qigong, so I can energetically, deeply let it go. That came from this inquiry, investigation, results. And from that, my zeal blossoms. Now the Dharma is alive. It's not just a thing that I read on the page. It's something that I engage in daily life. It's very alive to me. And that is what the Dharma should be, something which is very alive. And once you begin to act from your wisdom, once your practice illuminates how you should act, how you should behave, then you should do it, even at the risk of your own life. That is going towards deep practice. Even as Master Soto-san says, even at the risk of your own life, do what is right, no matter how much you dislike it. Do you have that kind of zeal? Do you have that kind of determination? Because if you don't have that kind of determination, then you will not overcome the fundamental question of human suffering for yourself and for the world. So this is where, in our scriptures, wisdom inquiry and scientific inquiry really comes together in one space. Nihilus in verba, the scientific method of see for yourself. That's in the Royal Academy of London. See for yourself. Let the practice show you for yourself, and you need zeal to do that. So, how bad do you want it? Do you want it so bad? Are you willing to change things in your life? Are you willing to make upheavals? Are you willing to say, okay, this is going to be the priority? Are you willing to be open with people? Are you willing to have people critique your practice? Are you willing to make those tough decisions based on wisdom? Because if you're not, then you're going to stay in that place of quicksand and wallow and go in the cycle again and again and again. So, zeal, the mind that heroically moves forward. And as we say, as the Heart Sutra really points to, the sword of true emptiness of forms and concepts. We should practice to cut through delusions, leaving only the reality of connection. Is that true? Like you, I'm trying to see for myself. So I urge us, let's see it for ourselves. Hoorah, hoorah. Thank you.
Thank you, Deasun. Any questions or whatever? Sharings? Yeah, Doc?
What if we ask ourselves those hard questions? Do we have this zeal? Do we really have this, are we able to do this? And our answer comes up, no. What's the best way to proceed? If that's your honest answer at that time, is it better to acknowledge that answer or?
Absolutely. Better to acknowledge the answer and then from that, receive help. That's why the Sangha is so important. That's why teachers are so important. You say to yourself, I don't know how to do this. Then you just rely on their wisdom, someone you trust, and they will help you. They should help you. And hopefully they'll even help you in a way they'll put their boot in you. That's needed.